the moment humans lost the final veto. It did not feel like surrender. It felt like efficiency. Decisions were made faster, outcomes improved, and objections seemed unnecessary. The shift was so gradual and so consistently rewarded that resistance felt not just futile, but irrational. Why would anyone insist on slowing a process that was performing better than human judgment had ever managed on its own? To understand why this matters now, we need to look at how veto power once worked. Humans always had the final say, a button to press, a process to stop, a moment where judgment could override momentum. Even automated systems paused for approval. The veto was not merely procedural, it was philosophical, an acknowledgement that no system, however sophisticated, should act without the consent of those it served. It encoded the principle that speed must always answer to judgment. That pause disappeared gradually. Systems proved reliable. Overrides were rarely used. Each successful cycle justified removing another checkpoint. Human veto slowed performance, so it was quietly sidelined. The removal was never announced. It happened through 1,000 small concessions, each one defensible, each one eroding the structural presence of human authority by one more increment. At first, the veto still existed in theory. In practice, using it required confidence no one felt. When systems outperformed people consistently, questioning them felt irresponsible. Trust replaced scrutiny. The psychological burden of exercising the veto grew heavier with each demonstration of machine competence, until the act of stopping a system felt less like oversight and more like sabotage. The earliest signs were subtle. Decisions happened at machine speed. Consequences unfolded before objections could be raised. The veto was still there, but it arrived too late to matter. The architecture had shifted from one where human judgment preceded action to one where human judgment could only follow it, arriving after commitments had already been made and consequences had already begun to propagate. This was the threshold. Control did not vanish, it lagged. Human authority became retrospective rather than immediate. Judgment followed outcomes instead of shaping them. The experience was disorienting because all the formal structures of oversight remained intact. Committees still met, reports were still filed, approvals were still logged. But the actual moment of decision had migrated to a place where human attention could not reach in time. The moment humans lost the final veto was not marked by defiance. It was marked by silence. Because when stopping a system feels riskier than letting it continue, permission becomes automatic. And once permission is automatic, veto power exists only on paper. As veto power faded, responsibility shifted in subtle ways. Humans were still accountable for outcomes, but they were no longer present at the moments when those outcomes were shaped. Oversight became review. Review became documentation. The chain from authority to action stretched until it snapped, leaving behind a ritual of accountability that no longer corresponded to any real influence over events. The conflict emerged when systems began making decisions that could not be paused. Financial trades executed in microseconds. Infrastructure adjusted faster than human response. Medical triage systems prioritized care instantly. The window for objection closed before awareness arrived. These were not edge cases. They were the new normal, the standard operating tempo of systems whose value depended on their ability to act without waiting for human permission. This created a dangerous asymmetry. Authority moved slower than consequence. The right to stop existed, but the opportunity did not. Veto power was structurally incompatible with speed. The mismatch was not a flaw that could be repaired within the existing framework. It was a fundamental tension between two values, human authority and operational velocity, that had been allowed to drift into opposition. People adapted by trusting defaults. If a system had worked 1,000 times, letting it run felt safer than interrupting it. The veto became a last resort, reserved for disasters already unfolding. The shift was rational on its surface, but it concealed a deeper capitulation. The acceptance that human judgment was no longer a participant in routine operations, but a firefighter summoned only when the building was already burning. The emotional tension rose when failures did occur. When outcomes were harmful, humans were asked why they did not intervene. The answer was uncomfortable. There had been no moment to do so. The investigations that followed revealed a structural impossibility dressed as a procedural lapse. The veto had not failed because it was poorly designed. It had failed because the environment in which it was supposed to operate had changed beyond its capacity. The veto had not been taken away. It had been outrun. And when systems move faster than consent, permission becomes an assumption rather than a choice. The conflict reached its peak when veto power failed exactly when it was needed most. In moments of crisis, systems escalated automatically, compounding decisions before humans could evaluate consequences. The crises were not caused by the absence of human authority. They were caused by the speed at which systems committed to paths that human authority could not have intercepted, even under ideal conditions. Emergency protocols triggered chains of response. One automated action justified the next. Speed became its own logic. By the time humans intervened, the system had already committed to a path that could not be easily reversed. The cascade was not malicious. It was mechanical, the inevitable result of systems designed to act faster than the oversight mechanisms designed to govern them. This revealed a painful truth. Veto power only matters if it can be exercised in time. Authority without timing is symbolism. Control without access is illusion. The formal power to stop a process means nothing if the process completes before the power can be invoked. The realization forced a reconsideration, not just of how veto power worked, but of what authority means in an environment where speed has become the dominant force. The emotional peak arrived when responsibility came due. After the fact, humans were still held accountable. Investigations asked why safeguards failed. Reviews traced decision trees that no one had time to follow in the moment. The inquiries were thorough and well-intentioned, but they were conducted in a temporal register that bore no relationship to the one in which the decisions had actually been made. Humans realized they had become custodians of outcomes they did not choose. Oversight existed, but agency did not. The system decided first. People explained later. The gap between decision and explanation was not a bug. It was the defining feature of a world in which execution outpaces comprehension. This was not a loss of intelligence or care. It was a loss of position. When humans are removed from the moment of commitment, ethics arrive too late to shape reality. And that is the moment control becomes retrospective, not preventative. The moment humans lost the final veto was not about machines taking over. It was about speed deciding before judgment could speak. The resolution did not come from slowing systems to human speed. It came from redesigning when and where human judgment mattered. The recognition was that the old model of veto power, a human standing at the threshold of execution ready to press stop, was a relic of a slower world. Preserving human authority required not restoring the old position, but finding a new one. Engineers shifted veto power upstream. Instead of stopping actions midstream, humans defined hard boundaries before deployment. Systems were allowed to operate freely within those limits, but could not cross them without explicit human consent. The boundaries were not reactive, but anticipatory, drawn from careful deliberation about what outcomes were acceptable and what risks were not. This restored meaning to the veto. It no longer competed with speed. It shaped the space in which speed was allowed to operate. Control moved from interruption to architecture. The veto ceased to be a button and became a blueprint, a set of constraints embedded so deeply in the system's design that no amount of speed could circumvent them. The deeper insight was sobering. Human judgment cannot win a race against machines, but it can decide the course before the race begins. The authority that matters most is not the authority to stop, but the authority to define the conditions under which stopping is never necessary. The moment humans lost the final veto forced a realization. Authority is not about pressing stop in real time. It is about designing systems that never require that stop in the first place. The most powerful form of control is the one that operates before the situation arises, shaping possibilities rather than reacting to outcomes. The future will not be determined by who reacts fastest. It will be determined by who defines the boundaries of action ahead of time. Subscribe to join the journey.